Time live at the NBA Finals. Will it be the final game for LeBron in a Cavalier uniform? And at least for the purposes of this season, the Warriors have put the Cavs on the brink yet again. We welcome you inside our own studio here, if you will, on the concourse at the Q, as we're presented by YouTube TV. Casey Stern, 3D, Brent Barry. I was going to call you Bones, but I figure your name is useful as well.
You just did.
Well, he doesn't care about his name because it's just 3D instead. We got a lot to discuss. Before we hear what you have to say, I want to hear what Cleveland said. Here are the Cavaliers and their thoughts and their mindset coming off of the Game 3 loss.
Well, I think that's why they're such a great team. But we've given ourselves a chance. I know that we'll come out in Game 4 and really compete. We're not going to give in. And as you mentioned, I mentioned last night too. Just the margin for error is very slim against the Warriors. I mean, I mentioned last night, you almost have to be perfect. There was a lot of things last night that we did well, but there are a couple of blown coverages, a couple of missed shots that and timely shots that didn't go our way that led to them winning the game.
And just tell the guys, games 1 and 3, we had our chances to win. We were right in the game with the opportunity to win those games. So we know we can beat this team, and we just got to have the confidence to do that. We got to be better in some areas that we, have some breakdowns in. But, our focus is not on, winning 4. Our focus is winning game 4, and that's got to be our mindset.
There's so much going around with this team, what we did in the past, We're not that team anymore. We're not that team from last year. We're not the team from 2 years ago. We ain't the team 3 years ago. So we ain't got the same team 6 months ago. So we gotta come out with the core, with the guys we got, and go out there and put something together.
Obviously, from a talent perspective, if you look at Golden State, from their top 5 best players to all our top 5 players, you would say that they're stacked better than us. I mean, let's just speak truth. What do we have to do? Is it we have to make more shots? Is it we have to have our minds into it a little bit more? Is it, if there's a ball on the ground, we can't reach for it. You got to dive for it. When you're playing, like I stated last night, or like 12 hours ago. Was it 12 hours ago? Like the room for error versus a team like this is slim to none. And I think I said last night, it's like playing the Patriots, it's like playing San Antonio. The room for error is slim to none. And when you make mistakes, they make you pay because they're already more talented than you are. But they also have the minds behind it too, and they also have the championship DNA. So.
Nothing wrong at all with the honesty there from LeBron. I think we all know, and everybody on the team knows, that you've got, 4 Hall of Famers on the other side. That's a more talented team. So it leaves fundamentals and all of those things to be so important. I know we're going to break it down on the court later, but I think it's imperative to bring up multiple times how many easy buckets the Warriors had. That's the kind of thing, right, he's talking about, 3D, that cannot happen if they have a chance to win.
Well, just like LeBron's very smart on picking teams apart, picking defenses apart over the course of the game. Well, the Warriors do the same thing as a team. That's the difference. So as the course of the game, they realize you're switching and they realize you're not coming together, switching properly. They will continue to have ball movement and player movement and find the open areas on the floor. In Game 3, the open areas was in the paint for slam dunks and easy layups.
You could say that again, 3D. They had 24 of 38 shots that the Warriors took, and they took 81 total in the basketball game. We're in the restricted area. Not just paint points, talking in the restricted area, 63% for them. A lot of that was JaVale McGee, Jordan Bell, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, in what it is we referred to after Game 2 with regards to slipping a lot of screens, getting to the basket, having freedom of movement. And for the Golden State Warriors, they've been in that flow since basically the second quarter of Game 2. Coming out of the Houston series, getting away from the isolation play, and starting to dictate the tempo at which they wanted to play with offensively by ball movement, player movement, and not letting the Cavs hold them up. They've done a beautiful job of that.
LeBron continues in his own right. We'll talk a lot about KD, who was the star of Game 3, but this is another one of these records when you look at kind of what he's chasing here with the 30-point games and continuing to stretch that mark, the most triple-doubles, et cetera, go on down the line. He's been great in this series. Yesterday in the second half, good, maybe not as aggressive and dominant as we saw certainly in game number 1 offensively. But what is there really left for LeBron to do? I mean, let's be honest. whether he's the best player ever or the best player now or in between, what else could he possibly do?
I don't know if it's one thing or two things, Casey, to your point, but can he be a better LeBron in Game 4? Whatever that is. Is it
right, what is that?
I don't know. Is it another triple-double? Is it 51? Or is it him continue to lead by example and trying to paint the best picture, paint the best belief that we can get one win? That is the only message he can preach right now to see if he can get his team to follow that lead.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of LeBron giving his team another chance. It was 88-88 in the fourth quarter. You're at home. You're trying to gain some advantage back after losing the 2 on the road. And Golden State went to the Hamptons lineup, and it outscored them 18-9 to finish the game. But the opportunity for them was there. And LeBron is not telling an untruth by saying that they have to play a near-perfect game to beat the Golden State Warriors. What's unfortunate and a little bit deflating, I think, Casey and 3D, is the fact that because of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson's performance and Draymond Green's foul trouble, you thought that the table was set for them to do it against Golden State in Game 3, and it just didn't go their way.
Just like LeBron honest about the two teams and their star power, let's be honest about the atmosphere, what it's going to be like in here tomorrow night. This is going to be a building where they're not just worried about staying in a series and a season, but they're wondering, every single person with 23 on, let's be honest, the fans are, even if LeBron's not, guys, about whether or not it's the last time they'll see him in a home uniform. It's going to be an interesting atmosphere because of that coming here tomorrow night.
It's amazing that the conversation started way back when I was following the Eastern Conference that what does LeBron do, when is he going to stay? But I think from his earlier press conference, how he broke down both teams, the Warriors and the Cavs, he's going to do the same thing when free agency comes.
Evaluate.
He's going to evaluate each team because he's not going to go somewhere and start over to lose. He's going to figure out, how do I get the best roster to give me the best opportunity to compete for a championship each year?
Well, there's no doubt he's compartmentalizing the competition part of it. But you're right, Casey. The fans who come here tomorrow night, and even if the Cavs win, it very well could be the last time they see LeBron James with the team then going on the road back to Golden State. Those thoughts are real. They are legitimate because this team might not be able to compete with the likes of a Golden State, and the restructure might not be something that LeBron wants to stay around for.
Good professionalism, by the way. Jeff Goldblum flying around on the set. It's a reference to a movie. Only
toughest game that we've played in this series to close it out, and we're going to need energy, effort, focus from every guy that steps foot on the floor for 48 minutes. And kind of like we did in Game 3, where we know they're going to throw some crazy punches, and we got to be able to weather the storm and their runs and the crowd and the atmosphere and all that. Just try to keep our composure as best we can. Whether shots go in or they don't, or calls go your way or they don't. No matter what the score is, you got to keep fighting, keep playing, because closeout games are the hardest things that you can ever experience in the playoffs.
As basketball players, we should all be offended if intelligence isn't the first thing you think about when you're looking at basketball players. I compare us to musicians, I compare us to artists, to architects, to surgeons, I compare us to the highest at any field, because what we do is hard. We're one percenters in the world. So when you walk into any locker room in the NBA, I expect you to think that all of these guys are intelligent at what they do, and I think that's a underrated trait from somebody outside of the league, from outside of the locker rooms, because they don't realize how hard the game is, I think, sometimes. But it's hard to find intelligence, character, unselfishness all at the same time, and that's rare in any profession, I think.
Good comments from KD. LeBron saying the same thing on the Cavaliers side, respecting the intelligence. But as Steve Kerr said yesterday in the presser, for our purposes of time, let's get to Kevin Durant, because he was pretty great. You want to look at exclusive classes? Take a look at these numbers for 40, 10, and 5 on the road in a finals. Also, third most in franchise history on the road in a final with 43, his career high as well. Last year we saw Game 3 that was similar to this, with similar plays. If you don't believe me, take a look at the footage. Remember this play? At the time, we thought that this three-pointer was going to be from Game 3. We thought the three-pointer last year was going to be the biggest shot of his career. However, he was better this time in Game 3?
Well, this time in Game 3, he showed us that, yes, the one-on-one package he still has, where a lot of people thought he went to it too much in the Houston Rockets series. And then in the second half, he said, let me remind people that I can still get my one-on-one game going and still get back into what we do as the Warriors, which is move the ball, guys going back door. That's how he got the 7 assists. So, Brent, he let people know that I can still go to my KD package, but I understand what we need to do as far as sharing the basketball.
Well, the numbers, 3D, for him to step up in a game with Steph and Clay struggling was incredible. He was 5 of 7 from outside the paint. In the first half, the Warriors as a team outside of KD were 1 of 13. They ended up 4 of 22 total, and Kevin himself made 11 of 15 field goals outside the paint. He was just killing them in the areas where he was spotting areas on the floor he wanted to get to. With very little resistance, he got there, and the result was the same, just bang, 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 to the tune of 43 points.
Let's talk about the defense against Kevin Durant, because I think a lot of us looked at it and said, okay, how much are we going to see LeBron guard him? And there were times, Bones, as you look at the video from last night, where it seemed like LeBron might have been able to fight through and stick with KD if he wanted to.
Well, we can say that having watched the film and talked about revisionist stuff, but the fact of the matter is there's a scheme involved, and what's not happening for them is the line of defense for the Cleveland Cavaliers is offering no help on the slip plays where there's not a lot of contact on these screens. You can see the two guys not coming together. How many bodies are on bodies on this play? Iguodala up over the top, nice pass. That's a layup. I think that was Draymond on the lob. And then on this one here, again, look at the bodies in the contact 3D, something we talked about. We didn't see it much in Game 3 from the Cavs defense.
No, we did not, and lack of communication as well. And we talked about it too well with Vince Carter, that if you're not coming together once again, it sounds like a broken record. But we've seen now all 3 games. If you're not coming together, you do not communicate properly, there will be easy layups and dunks.
Are you seeing enough adjustments on the Cavaliers side to what we've been explaining every single game? Being fair.
I'm seeing enough adjustments, but I think that there's possibly something the Cavs coaching staff might think about with regards to switching things up for 2 minutes here, 4 minutes here, where you could try to dictate as much as you can defensively. The problem that I see in that, and I can see the dilemma that maybe the coaching staff goes through, is you have a team that's not been connected defensively all year long. Right. Some of these habits, Casey, this is not cliche. 3D, I know this. These habits get established in training camp. These are things at the very beginning of the year where you establish not only your identity defensively, but your trust in one another defensively. And because of the roster turnover of these Cavaliers, they're not as connected on that end of the floor. Golden State has shot over 50% in every one of these games. That kind of disconnect shows itself in the biggest moments, and we've seen that.
When we look, speaking of adjustments, at the way that they defended against KD, what, if anything, do you do differently specifically against Durant than what we see here in the video from last night?
Go get the ball out of his hands. After he knocks down 3 or 4 shots in his row, you go get out of his hands. So what you were trying to say earlier, Casey, we're trying to say, when will LeBron James go to Ty Lue and say, you know what, no more switching. I want to guard him one-on-one. I want to mano. That's what I want to do. That's what the world's asking for, because we see now the switching is not working 1 through 3.
And the other thing you could do is have a designated hitter. I know it's a baseball term here, Casey.
Yeah, I like that you did that.
Yeah, but what you can do is
hitman in the pregame. So
whoever Draymond Green is guarding, if he's on the floor in these situations, the defender on Kevin Durant knows he's getting help from Draymond's man, and at some point he comes over to double team. You press up on Steph, you press up on Clay. If the first pass is out to Draymond Green and you're the Cavs, you're going to live with the decision-making of Draymond Green out there. And who knows, does Draymond shoot 20 to 22 shots in a game?
You shake his hand.
Yeah, if he does that, and I'm not saying he can't score, but that benefits you because it's not KD doing it. It's not Steph doing the damage. It is a tactic that a lot of teams work on, and it might be something that they consider. But so far, it's been Golden State basketball on full display on offense.
You know, Clay said yesterday when we had him in the post game, he said it was a night off. And then he was very honest where he said, 3D, he said, hey, look, it's got to hurt if you lose and we only get 21 points.
Yes.
You're a shooter.
Yes.
Very rare that shooters have games back-to-back like we just saw. Bones is a shooter, too.
It's just weird.
I did watch it. Well, it's just 3D.
Sorry,
it's
keep going
3D.
with your question. That's all
You
right.
were a great shooter, Bones. And you did lead the league in three-point percentage.
Thank you.
There you
Yes.
go. So
Make you feel better?
You
Can
can
I
get to the
continue? It's a
question.
one-hour show.
Now, can I go ahead and answer your
Yes,
question? There?
back-to-back days normally doesn't
There's
happen.
no way Steph Curry's going 1 of 10 from three-point land tomorrow night. There's no way. There's no way Klay's going to struggle from the field. So now, yes, you may concentrate on KD a little bit more, but like KD proved with 7 assists, he will share the basketball if you decide to double team him.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the Cavaliers might want to hand out raincoats for their fans in the front rows tomorrow because of what Klay Thompson and Steph do in response to something where they have a standard at which they want to play at, and they didn't do it on the biggest stage. There has to be a response coming from the Splash Brothers, and that could be problematic for the Cavs.
All right, we got more coming up on the other side. How about arguably the GOAT, Kareem, in the house? We'll break it down with him when we come back. More coming up on Game Time. A tough task. Always easy to say this. Run DBC back together with you. Stern, DZ, Bones. You look like you have a dad joke prepared. Do you want to open?
No, nothing
Do you have
prepared.
an index card there? With
I'll find one throughout the
We
broadcast.
might need it to kind of lighten things here in the city after what took place in game number 3. And the story, again, was the same 3D that it was last year in game 3, and that's the arrival of the Kevin Durant that everybody wants, which is the one that dominates. They weren't happy enough with the 20 and the 26, so they got 43.
Yeah, I think after game 1, I think he was 8 of 22 from the field, and they said Durant was in a slump, not shooting the ball well, and I was like, what are they talking about? And then he reminds us on how good and efficient scorer that he is. And, Brent, if you'd have told me that the Splash Bros would have come into Game 3, shoot the ball terribly, and this guy would show up for 40, I said that could happen, but it did happen in a big way.
Well, we had mentioned, again, coming off of the Houston series and how much isolation play and the capable switching that Houston employed against Golden State, that Kevin Durant worked his way out of that isolation ball into a great rhythm game in Game 2. And because he was in such a great rhythm in Game 2 that carried into Game 3, Steve Kerr said, you know what, let's try that isolation thing again. And it worked out to the tune of 43 massive points. And it just looks like Kevin Durant's toying with what it is that is the defender. Sometimes it doesn't look like there's a defender, but it's just so easy for him to score the basketball, and it was a show last night here at the Q from Kevin Durant.
And partner, to your point, how impressed were you with Steve Kerr realized that in the second half where he kind of took the ball out of Steph's hand, it was point KD down the stretch.
We could say it was easier for Steve because Steph and Klay were not splashing anything. So it's kind of like, all right, Kevin's going. Let's just go feed Kevin and see what happens. And Casey, if you play that way and Kevin does get going, at some point, what didn't happen for Cleveland was a massive adjustment to go and double team him on a night where Steph and Klay were not shooting the ball well. This is the dilemma for any opposing coach that faces the offensive potency of the Golden State Warriors. Is okay, I've seen that those guys aren't going tonight, but I know what they're capable of doing. Do I challenge them and dare them to take shots by sending a secondary defender to Kevin Durant? They elected not to do it. KD was still enough, and then a couple late key baskets by Steph, and they win the game.
You know, the interesting thing is, this is the beauty, I was saying this last night, of this team. What makes them an all-time great. They can have, and I know Draymond as well, but 3 Hall of Fame scorers, and one could be great, and the other 2 don't need to play. They can win Game 4 tomorrow, DZ, where Klay maybe has one of his nights, puts up 37. The others are mediocre. So
that's a quarter. That's not a night.
But to your point, Bones, they're unselfish and understand that it doesn't matter who's doing it on that given night.
You hit it right on the head. Each guy understands. Jordan Bell. How many times you tap me? He's like, how come they could go out and shoot the basketball? 2 dribbles, draw the defense in, easy layup, or a wide open 3. That's to your point. They understand that there's 3 guys with flamethrowers on the floor, but everyone else on the floor, Brent, understands that unless I got an easy layup or a dunk, I'm looking for one of those 3 guys to finish the play.
Justin Kimbrell, our brilliant researcher, gave you the numbers. 24 of 38 for the Golden State Warriors in the restricted area. 24 field goals in the restricted area to the tune of 63%. I mean, that's just a massive output
Iggy don't do it like
of
that.
off-ball movement and cutting and freedom and flow in the offense. and another unselfish game by the Golden State Warriors and what they can do on that end of the floor.
Someday I want to love something as much as 3D loves any word before only, and you love Justin Kimbrell, but I'm going to work on it. Did you love the defense against what you saw from Kevin Durant with the switching? Look, LeBron obviously has done a lot. He's been fantastic in the postseason, but I think 3D, we're sitting up there, a bunch of us watching the game, and you're thinking, okay, in the fourth quarter, do you want to see him take on more of a challenge and not allow such easy switches with KD in terms of defensively yesterday?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the easy switches, Brent, we know is you have to switch with the purpose. And a lot of times, to your point, Casey, LeBron could stay with KD right there, fight over the screen. We know he's strong enough. And like you said earlier, Bones, now KD's in the groove. When he gets that little turnaround jump shot, there's no way you can block that shot.
Now, one of the things that possibly the coaching staff for the Cavaliers might be discussing is when they have these switches, are they going to have a designated hitman? And that's like almost a baseball term, Casey. The designated hitter in this case for the Cavs would be that, like in this situation, when Draymond Green's moving away from the ball, at some point that should trigger Tristan Thompson to come back and double team. And it might be one of these situations where you try this strategy by saying, look, whoever Draymond Green is guarding, if we get this switch and Kevin Durant has the ball, after a count, you're coming from that end of the floor. You're communicating to the guy guarding Durant, hit right or hit left, so you know the double team is coming. And you're not leaving Clay and Steph, but you are leaving Draymond Green open to shoot maybe 16 to 18 shots in the game, not necessarily threes, and challenge him to make more plays on the offensive end. But last night, no stopping Kevin Durant. It really was a thrill to watch that performance here. No offense to the Cavs fans, but a few of them even leaving the building.
So they're really good. They're really good.
They're really good, but they had an appreciation for how great a scorer, an all-time great scorer Kevin Durant is.
They got to leave the building officially after he hit that one from about 28 feet. One of the big late buckets came from Andre Iguodala. There were questions during the game. Is it health? Is it age? He didn't look like he wanted to get up at all. He was giving the ball up, but he showed he can get up. That dunk was one of that huge plays down the stretch in that fourth quarter.
We were all laughing. There was a couple plays where he wasn't rotating as fast. The feet weren't moving. We were wondering why he was giving up certain plays. And then he gets the ball and he gives up the assist. Like plays like that, you're like, most people would shoot that, but he's like, no, I know Klay Thompson's on the floor. Let me bait the defense and get my teammates easier shots. And then when he came down the pipe and dunked on Tristan Thompson and gave that look, Brent, we said, there's something left.
Kevin Durant a plus 15, Klay Thompson a plus 14. The next guy in line who's missed the last 6 playoff games for the Golden State Warriors is Andre Iguodala, a plus 14 off the bench last night. And you see how efficient the role players were. Yeah, we'll talk about this throughout the day. The easy cuts and easy opportunities. Shaun Livingston in the series 13 of 14 through 3 games. The one thing, 3D, that I think you and I appreciate about Andre Iguodala and the way that Steve Kerr talks about him often is there is a coyness to Andre Iguodala.
Yes.
He's always got a setup. Like he's 2 steps ahead, and he's going to get to something eventually. You don't know exactly when, but he's just such a coy basketball player.
Yes, a very good use of coy. By the way, hitman is more of a Scorsese term than a baseball term.
Designated hitter. How's that?
Right, exactly.
The designated hitter is where I wanted to go with that. Yeah, that's
we'll help Bones during the break. We'll get the Cavs side of this, including LeBron James, who himself had a very good game yesterday, but not good enough in a Game 3 loss. What else can the King do? I think human element is important, and I think even though LeBron's got a ton of will, and clearly he knows that he's got to have confidence in his team for Game 4, I think it's fair to say he knows this is going to be a stretch to go win 4 times in a row. So how does it, human element 3D, not creep in for him, the unknown that stands beyond that buzzer, if this game goes the wrong way tomorrow?
There's no question it's creeping in, Casey. Obviously, LeBron's not going to tell us that. LeBron and Kevin Love, in my opinion, have done their job as the role as being superstars setting the table. They cannot find a committee of guys, Brent, consistently, the George Hills, the Nance, or for JR, or for Kyle Korver, whoever it is. You need 3 of those guys. Let's face it, Kyrie Irving's gone. He was that third guy that gave, Love and LeBron that extra oomph to get that one win last year. Now, how do you get all these new faces, Brent, to play on that kind of level? They've never been there before.
Yeah, that's the interesting point, 3D. If you really think about their roster construct, last year Golden State beats this Cavs team 4-1, and then the roster turnover that they have, and think about maybe some of the deficiencies that this roster represents as opposed to last year and how impactful they could be on offense because of Kyrie and his shot creation and his big moment shot taking, that element completely gone. The inexperience of all the guys that they brought over and the fact that they have not been part of this history. You know, as much as it's Golden State against Cleveland round 4, you know, Golden State, those guys, most of them, the core of their guys have been around. Last year was KD's first go. But for these inexperienced young players that the Cavs brought in at the trade deadline, it's just not enough for what Golden State represents. And we've seen that play out along with the Lions 3D of when we are sitting up here and pontificating about adjustments. How well does Ty Lue know this team? How deep can they go into an offensive or defensive playbook not having this time together? It's nearly an impossible task because they just don't have that connectivity.
Even with all of that, if we're being fair, they're not good enough. They're not. Nobody is.
I want to say that,
but they're not.
Without disrespect, the roster.
No, I'm not trying to disrespect
this
them.
roster.
They're not as talented.
Yes, they cannot compete.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to be. It's not. I think LeBron knows that. I mean, they're not as talented. So how much of that will play into his decision, I think is something fair to ask, because LeBron's sitting here. Look, LeBron wants to win. He wants to win championships. He could take anybody to the finals with the way he played in the East, right? I think we all agree with that. Right. As good as Boston is, LeBron has shown, look what he did this year. Take anybody. But DZ, don't you think he's kind of evaluating this roster during this series, the way LeBron mind works, going into the offseason saying, okay, how close are we? How much do I believe if I stay that we can win? Isn't this an evaluation process for LeBron?
Casey, LeBron is sitting there, to your point, evaluating, saying, if I stay, I know I have Kevin Love, I know I have a few pieces, can I, possibly entice a Paul George or some free agent to come here? Versus, do I go to L.A., do I go to the Clippers, do I go somewhere else? Now I have to start all over with some young talent. One thing we know about, to your point, LeBron will weigh both sides out very closely before he makes that tough decision.
Well, I think LeBron right now is examining his team and what they could possibly do for Game 4. I don't think it's going beyond that for him. I think he is compartmentalizing what it is that's at stake for them to try to compete harder and better and for a longer period of time in Game 4. After that, we've got a few days. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are in an interesting situation with their roster construct, the 8th pick in the NBA draft coming up. What kind of young talent can you bring in here? Or can you use that as an asset in speaking with LeBron and saying, how do you feel we could complete this roster? Is that an asset that you could possibly use to retool, to find a veteran that comes in to complement what they're doing? So there'll be a lot of work in, let's say, 48 hours if Cleveland is to get swept with how it is that they're going to think about that. And LeBron will have that time to assess how the front office is looking at the draft, how they're approaching free agency, what their flexibility is with regards to their salary cap, and whether or not one or two players for him in the Eastern Conference, again, to stay in the Eastern Conference, can be an addition to the Cavs to keep them in this position, which is getting back to the finals on his shoulders every year and beating Golden State.
Here's the thing, being fair, and LeBron's I can't even imagine what goes on in his head, Bones, but I'm thinking just from a much lesser point of view, if this was our last show together here, I would tell you as a professional, and I'm doing this 15 years, I'd concentrate on the show, but there's no way during every break I wouldn't be thinking about,
this is why Ty Lue doesn't rest him. This is why Ty Lue plays him 48 minutes.
It's a little different. It's a little different.
Yeah. At a much bigger level, I would be thinking, I'd be thinking 10 times more, not 10 times less. No?
No. LeBron's been dealing with this since he's been 17, 18 years old, so it's a little different. Versus that my task is, as the leader of this franchise, try to get one win. That's my only focus. And obviously, for people like you, as soon as I would lose that game, then that's going to be the first question. Yes, first question.
No, I would say 3D's right. LeBron James is locked into the competition, not the camaraderie, which is what we do. He wants he wants to like I said, compartmentalize. He's one of the all-time greats for that reason. No matter what's going on, whether that be injury to him or somebody else on the roster, whether it be somebody is not playing, he's still going to bring his monumental efforts to the floor, and then afterwards all of that talk is upcoming, but it's still about Game 4.
Let me ask you one quick one before we get to break. For the rest of his team, the guys that are in that room, how much is their will equal to a guy like LeBron, or can you? Because we were talking about this in the back. You get into a game 4, I think a lot of people around the arena today talking about the same thing, and that is, if the Warriors put it on them early, maybe the Cavs go away. They're not as good. We know LeBron's not going to give up fighting, but how about the rest of the team? How does he get? A lot of these guys, to your point, Bones, have never been through this
That
before.
is a concern for me.
Right?
Dennis and I have talked about this a lot, about the I don't like the cliche term, but it's a buy-in. It's an emotional buy-in.
Sure.
They haven't been through the chapters of this battle between Golden State and Cleveland. And so for those guys, how much emotional equity did they have in the game, 3D? They know what they're up against. I do want to mention Rodney Hood stepped up in a massive way, and I think deep down as players we're thrilled for what Rodney was able to do given the minutes. But for the rest of these guys, there are some guys that have been with LeBron that will want to go and fight for him. These other guys, you wonder how they're going to approach this game 4 with the high-pressure stakes of being down 3-0.